Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the First Class, Second Place podcast. I'm your host, Jason Enrique, and we got another first-class guest up in the building today. But before we continue, I want to remind everybody that we are live in Bravery Studios in Garfield, New Jersey. Shout out to Najee Behind the Glass. Hope everybody is doing well. Thank you so much for tuning in. And a couple of quick shout-outs really quick. I want to give a shout-out to Shoshana Withers and Eddie LeBron. The new Alliance film is coming out pretty soon, just finished wrapping, and has been submitted to some festivals. A film that I was just in where you could actually hear me but not see me has just been submitted into the Long Island Film Festival, so congratulations to everybody involved in that. And more projects coming soon, and also a disclaimer for the play that I announced on social media and on the show that was supposed to be on June 28th, unfortunately got pushed back, but don't worry, the show is still coming, we're still casting, so on and so forth. It's just that it's now been postponed to a much later date, and we will give you further details when we know more. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, let's introduce my very first class guest. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been waiting for this for a while. This is a very super talented person. I think she's got the world ahead of her, and she's setting it ablaze right now. With that, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Kangela Guerrero is in the building. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay, I didn't want to get that wrong. So.
No, you got it. That's perfect. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, so like I said, we've been trying to figure this out for quite some time. I have a busy schedule. You have a busy schedule.
Yes.
But and that's fascinating to me because you're a very young lady. I don't know if I just disclose your age or anything like that.
No, it's totally fine.
So you're 23 years old.
Yes.
And it's just amazing the amount of things that you are, that you're scheduled up with, that you're booked up with, and so much that you've accomplished so far. But we'll get into all of that and so on and so forth. But let's start off from the very, very beginning. Where does Kangela Guerrero come from?
So I come from Bergen County, New Jersey, born and raised, of course. I'm a born and raised Jersey girl at heart. I started really just my childhood in Teaneck. That's where I grew up. And from there on, I've always just been involved in all kinds of different things. I was a very busy kid growing up. My mom always kept my little brother and I doing things, doing activities, swimming class, hip hop class, baseball. Like, we did it all. But for me,
Did you
really
have a childhood?
yeah. I definitely had a childhood.
Okay.
Very, very busy childhood. But
Because you need to have a scraped knee every now and then.
Oh, I had a couple scraped knees.
Okay.
My brother and I, we grew up in the time where we were still playing outside in the front lawn, like playing in the backyard, because I feel like you don't see that as much anymore these days.
And
not
to cut you off, but I'm a little bit older than you. I'm 39, so I certainly come from that era where we always stayed outside. So to hear your generation was still that,
yes.
It's pretty cool. But it's also kind of damning to know that a younger generation is quite not like that anymore.
No, yeah, the technology is definitely taking over.
Also things changed during COVID too.
Yeah, exactly. And it's definitely a good thing that we have all the technology we have and seeing it evolve, but it's also kind of a bad thing because we're seeing it so much amongst young children. And honestly, like, I didn't have that growing up. I came from a very strict household. I wasn't even allowed to have social media until I was like 15, 16 years old. Wow. And, already YouTube was out, Vine was out, Instagram and Facebook were already out. I remember there was one website, I would beg my mom to let me have it. It was called We World. It was like an elementary school. And Club Penguin, but you're interacting with other people. I wasn't even allowed to have that. So it wasn't until I was 15, 16 years old that I was able to have social media. I always had an itch of like obsessing over the entertainment industry, whether it was watching Miss USA, Miss Universe, and Miss America growing up, or watching an award show, seeing the Today Show every morning, waking up to that. So I always loved seeing that, but there wasn't really a way to like get started at such a young age. No one ever really talked much about it.
Right.
But when I finally opened up to the world of social media when I was like 15, 16 years old, I kind of saw this whole world of creativity from a totally different landscape. And of course, there were other aspects of creativity in my past and growing up in childhood. I was always involved in the school plays. I did ballet for about 10 years. So I definitely had that creative and artistic background. But seeing it from a social media perspective, I was like, wow, I can edit, I can make videos and do crazy ideas. So that's kind of where it all started for me. And I think just keeping myself busy, and from a very young age and trying different things, it kind of got me to where I am today.
Yeah, no, I sense that. Now, growing up in Bergen County, and also you being of Hispanic descent, you're Dominican, I don't want to say that Bergen County is like one of the upper class counties,
Yeah.
at least not compared to some other ones in Jersey, but it's fairly. And
Yes.
and because of unfortunately the world that we live in today, especially with everything that's going on with this administration and so on and so forth,
Yeah.
were there any kind of like for instance, like my best friend, he grew up, he was born and raised in Costa Rica. Like so, I'm sorry, he was born in Costa Rica, but he was raised in Midland Park.
Okay.
And because he was not from this country, he had to deal with a little bit of racial tension and so on and so forth. And then also because he grew up in the where he grew up, he kind of adapted to him. So it was like if he went back to his country, he wasn't Hispanic enough for them. If he went back to where he lived, he wasn't considered white enough, and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to know if you personally growing up around that time did you have to deal with any of those trials and tribulations?
For me personally, in regards to my, race and ethnicity, the one thing I have to deal with, and I unfortunately still hear it to this day, is people not even believing that I'm Dominican American, because of the way I carry myself, because of the way I dress, because of the way I act. My mother hears it to this day. The classic line is, "Oh, you're Dominican? Like you're way too beautiful to be Dominican," or "You're so how are you Dominican? You're so polite and you have class, you have etiquette." And
Gotta love those backhanded compliments,
it's such a backhanded compliment. And my mom, my little brother, and I, we heard it all the time. Another thing too is even being criticized by the way I was raised. My mom, from the very beginning of my childhood, always taught us rules of etiquette, whether it was how to dress, what proper utensils to use at the table. Obviously your magic words, say please and thank you, but it was definitely more than the usual. And people would constantly criticize her for it. And we actually had this conversation not so long ago because it came up during a event that I was a panelist at, and it was like, oh, people were asking my mom, how did your daughter get to this point? How did she do this and that? And she would answer those questions like, well, this is how I raised my kids from the beginning. And there was a lot of backlash for that. And then on top of that, hearing the backlash of like, oh, there's no way you're Dominican American. There's no way your mother's Dominican, because of the way we carried ourselves. And it was really heartbreaking to hear that. I think the media today paints Dominicans in a very negative limelight, and
the stereotypes and
and I might get a lot of heat for saying this, but there are a lot of Dominicans who are doing it themselves. Some of the jokes, some of the comedy that we see on social media is great and it's funny, but there are many individuals out there using social media platforms that are just taking it a little too far, and it just makes us look bad. So we're doing it to ourselves. I actually heard a podcast clip from a podcast in the Dominican Republic, and the host said word for word, "Las mujeres dominicanas siempre están desarregladas," meaning Dominican women are never basically taking care of themselves. And it's like, you're on a podcast. You have such a huge platform. You have the blessing and the opportunity to have this equipment, to have this platform, and you're using it to basically diminish your own people. And I find that to be so upsetting. We're not like that. I think there's good and bad in every culture and every ethnicity. That's just the way the world is. It doesn't matter what your background is. There's always going to be good and bad somewhere. But you shouldn't be using platforms like this to really just bring down your own background. And I think and I know I'm kind of going off a little bit on a tangent here, but I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I did grow up hearing those things. I still do to this day. But we're also seeing it a lot in media, and it's just it's just really difficult, which is why I love doing this and why I'm doing all of the projects that I'm doing, because I feel like I can be a part of that change and a part of that small community of individuals pushing for a more positive outlook on it and using the media for good.
Right. And I also figured, like, since you are in the media, kind of like the tricks and the ins and outs. You could have somebody like that that's basically just saying it even though they don't believe it, but they're just doing it for clicks. And also, I want to point out that, I've been very fortunate to work with some people that I thought I would never get a chance to work with when I started this podcast and to the social media stratosphere. And long story short, there's people out there that I know and I've had on my show, I've been very fortunate to have on my show, where they are social media influencers, and they do the funny stuff and they do the stereotypical stuff,
Which is great because I love comedy.
right,
Don't get me wrong.
and it's just for entertainment purposes. But when the camera's off and you actually have a conversation with them,
Yeah.
it's like night and day. So I think that
Yes.
people, certain people, not them, but certain people have a hard time drawing that line of reality and fantasy.
Yeah, it's definitely something I've seen personally in recent events, you know, seeing big figures in social media and different industries as well, where, you know, you see them in front of a camera and it's one thing, and when the cameras are off or the audience is gone, it's a completely different person. And it's kind of the number one thing I always give people advice on when people come to me and ask me for advice about starting content and being a content creator influencer. The number one advice is to just be yourself. You
Yes.
know, it's the
I
best
say
thing
that
you
all
can
the
do.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I say it all the time because one of the things that I get asked a lot is, or I get told a lot, I should say, is I want to start a podcast, but I just don't know what to talk about, or I don't know how I'll go about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the best example that I can give you is baseball. There is 1,000,000,001 baseball podcasts out there. It doesn't matter what you talk about. I mean, it does and it doesn't, but mainly there's 1,000,000,000 other sports podcasts out there, but I only listen to the specific ones that I listen to
Yeah.
because I want to hear what that person has to say and their opinions and them just being themselves, not because they're talking about baseball, because you could talk about baseball. I could talk about baseball. Najee can talk about baseball. My dog can talk about baseball. But I'm only going to listen to the ones that I care what their opinions and thoughts are of the matter and on the game and so on and so forth. So I say that all to say that don't worry about what you should talk about. Just be yourself. I mean, if you say that you have a knack for this and you want to do it, just go ahead and do it. And I've seen plenty of people in the podcast industry that they'll stop at episode 10 and then they'll never do it again. And that goes to show that they never had it. And I actually read a statistic that I want to say like around 85 to 87% of podcasters in the beginning don't get past episode 10 or episode 15.
Wow.
So you and I are in a much smaller demographic of people that stay consistent.
Yeah, consistency is key when it comes to anything in the entertainment industry and really just in life, period. Because if you don't have that consistency, how are you going to build it into a costumbre, as we say in Spanish? You know, you kind of just have to keep that momentum going. And I think it's also about feeling discouraged because you could do 100 episodes and be like, oh my gosh, I'm not seeing the results that I want. But it's not going to happen overnight, which I think is something that we're seeing a lot in today's world, where someone can be social media famous overnight, which is so great. And I mean, I don't think anyone can disagree. We would love that to be the case for everyone.
Sure, yeah.
But, you know, it's not the case all the time. And seeing that can probably leave people very discouraged very early on and a lot quicker.
Yeah.
But I think also enjoying the process. You know, you shouldn't be so focused on, oh, I want to hit 1 million followers, or I want that blue check mark, which you can actually buy now, which is kind of sad. You can't really work for it anymore. But I think, which my hot take, by the way, but I think it's honestly just, you should be enjoying the process of it and like seeing that build up, because when you reach that level of success, no matter how big or small it may be, you know, success is success. And when you look back, you're like, wow, look at all the amazing things I did. You know, you want to be present and enjoy that process.
I have learned that success doesn't necessarily have to be defined by my bank account, because I've been successful in other ways and my bank account's just trying to catch up.
Yeah, no, I agree. Absolutely. And I think the biggest success is if you're happy doing it. That's where I think you hit the money. Once you're just happy doing what you're doing, there's no bigger reward than that.
Right. So obviously you and I we come from different generations. You're from a younger generation.
Yes.
And I know that for a lot of people around my age range, we grew up on the Angie Martinez's and the Cypher Sounds of the world and the Rosenbergs and the Ebros and so on and so forth and the Charlemagnes. But you coming from a younger generation, I feel like people have kind of gotten away from that kind of that kind of style, for lack of a better term, and they're just kind of wanting to do their own thing, which is not a bad thing. You know, you should always be yourself. But I feel like it's almost like I kind of compare it to like rappers now, where rappers don't necessarily do their history on the genre that they're profiting off of, and you know, paying homage to their peers and you know the ones that paved the way for them. So I guess for you, I just want to know out of curiosity, since we come from different generations, like who were some of your inspirations into wanting to do what you want to do and what you're doing now?
Oh, wow. That's a really great question. I mean, I have so many different little career paths. I would have to say, in regards to the social media, um, there's a lot of inspiration back there. My biggest one was probably the Dolan twins. The
Okay.
Dolan twins were these YouTubers, actually Jersey natives themselves. They don't do
Okay.
YouTube or social media anymore, but they started off on Vine, and they were just being their silly, goofy selves. They were just being silly teenage boys, but their platform grew so much, and I don't know what it was. They always knew how to make me laugh. And I was like, I want to do that one day, you know? And also, I feel like the inspiration continues to grow the more people we're seeing evolve. I mean, we're seeing Alex Cooper now with Call Her Daddy.
Yeah.
I love Alex Cooper. She is literally an alpha female in the world of podcasting because it is a very male dominated field. And seeing her do her thing, I just saw her documentary Call Her Alex on Hulu, and it just moved me. It had me emotional because it was that extra boost of motivation that I needed to be like, okay, if she can do it, I can do it. To that level and that extent, you know, I mean, for her to have an entire media platform now, like Unwell, it's mind-boggling. It's how she was able to start from the ground up, and she's just being herself. So seeing people in the very beginning, like the Dolan twins, to seeing people today like Alex Cooper in the social media world, in the podcasting world, in regards to hosting, because that's definitely a big thing for me, hosting live shows and things like that. I honestly have to say Mario Lopez, Jeannie Mai, seeing those figures hosting events like Miss USA and Miss Universe, it's just so incredible to see how they've started also from the ground up. I know with Mario Lopez it's very different because he started off with acting, but it just goes to show, like, you don't have to just stick to one thing. If you market off of something else and it continues to just get better and better, then keep on going with that. But those would have to be two of the main figures in that realm as well that I'm very inspired by, and hopefully, God willingly, can walk in their shoes one day.
Has there ever been moments in your career where, as great as it seems to be going and you staying consistent, has there ever been one moment or maybe even a couple moments where it really hit you hard and basically knocked you on your ass, and then you'd be like, you start having doubts and reservations if you want to continue doing this? Because it's a tough business to be in.
Yeah, I've had a lot of moments like that. I think burnout is definitely the one way I can put it where I've had that feeling. Burnout is something that occurs constantly. At times specifically, though, I would have to say when I started. When I really started to take social media seriously, it was right out of high school. So I graduated from Immaculate Conception High School. They were located in Lodi. It's not there anymore, unfortunately, but I graduated in 2020.
Okay.
So COVID hit,
Right, yeah.
school shut down, and I just wasn't in the best place mentally and emotionally. And then with COVID on top of that, it didn't help. And I kind of just needed like that extra push. And I always wanted to do social media. I always wanted to do modeling. I always wanted to do the hosting and being an MC one day. It was so many different things. And it was like, oh, I don't know if I can do it. So I think the moment where I felt doubt was probably just in the very beginning. And it wasn't until I watched this documentary, literally around that time, around like April, May of 2020, I watched this documentary called The Secret. And
that's very
literally moved me. And my mom was the one that sat me down. She was like, you're going to put your phone away. You're going to put your laptop away. You're going to stop draining yourself. And you're going to sit down and you're going to dedicate 2 hours to this. That's all I'm asking you. Shut down. Like, she literally made me shut down my phone, put it in the kitchen. I wasn't allowed to distract or anything. She was so serious with me. She's like, focus on this documentary and watch your mindset shift. And from that moment on, I have been a completely different person. And if anything, I feel like I've been leveling up just day by day, year by year. And I feel like that's what kind of helped me shift out of that self-doubt and, oh, should I even be doing this? Not just in this career, but in anything I've done in life.
Yeah,
really.
just in life. I mean, in general. I mean, because one of the things that I've, managed to struggle with even before I even had an inkling of doing a podcast is, am I even worthy of doing some of the things that I want to achieve? Am I even worthy about, even, being alive right now, dare I say? There's moments that I've, where like life had really hit me hard, and those kind of things creep in the back of my mind. So
Yeah.
I personally, I have seen The Secret. I haven't read the book, but I have seen it. I'm very
I
familiar with
do
the
also have to
documentary.
read the book.
I'm very familiar with the documentary you're talking about.
Yes.
But I just think that it really depends on your mindset, because
Yes.
even though I've made strides since then, I can't honestly say it was because from watching The Secret. I mean, I'm glad that it worked out for you, because you have the resume to back it up and so on and so forth. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that you have to ultimately find out what works for you. So for some people it's religion, for some people it's The Secret, for some people it's sports, or whatever the case may be. I mean,
Yeah.
I know a podcaster who I honestly don't speak to much these days anymore because of their political affiliation and how different in they pivoted, but to use them as an example, what got them through their strives, their struggles and so on and so forth, was the Bible. And that's, even though
Yes.
I'm not a religious person, I respect the fact that it took something like that to make that person feel better about themselves and keep on moving.
Yeah, I will definitely add on to that. Faith also did get me through it. So for me personally, I do find myself to be a very religious person. I don't go to church every Sunday. I'm going to be so honest, but which is
It's okay,
also
you're
kind of a
forgiven.
hot take, because a lot of people think, oh, you have to go to church every Sunday to have good faith. You'd be surprised the people that go to church every Sunday, and the moment they step out of that church, they're a completely different person, and they're not even living out God's word in a sense. So that's just one thing I had to throw out there, because a lot of
Sure, yeah.
people think like, oh, but how can you have a lot of faith but not go to church every Sunday? I try and go once a month, once a month, twice a month. But I think faith is very important in my family. I went to Catholic school basically almost my whole life, from fifth grade all the way through senior year of high school. And it's something I still carry with me every single day. La Virgencita, the Virgin Mary, is like, of course, something that I always keep in mind. I always have her here on my necklace, just like kind of having her as protection as well. And kind of just knowing that God's timing is perfect timing. That too also keeps me very content. If like, oh my God, why did this happen? It's like, you know what? Everything in life happens for a reason. God knows what he's doing. I'm just going to leave it up to him and just try and move forward. So faith is also something that kind of keeps me out of that whole mindset of like denial and, oh, should I be doing this? Is this the right thing to do? You're not going to be put in a situation that you can't handle. And that's something that I firmly believe. But I would have to say, those two things are definitely what keep me going. The art of attraction, of course, and practicing manifestation, and also having my faith in God, and making sure that I always keep that in mind, and knowing that his guidance will always get me through.
Yeah. Now, you said something a little while ago that I kind of want to go back to, and it's going to lead to my next point. So,
Yeah.
when we were talking about, you growing up within your culture and your ethnicity and everything, one of the things that even still bothers you to this day is when people say, like, you're Dominican, but you're too pretty to be Dominican, or you're too smart, or whatever the case may be. And when you said that, you reminded me of somebody that I was in the process of beginning to date earlier this year. It just didn't go anywhere. But this person is on the spectrum, and but it was like extremely mild, but they are on the spectrum nonetheless. And when they told me that, she was very thankful that the first thing that didn't come out of my mouth was, wow, you don't look like you have autism, or you're too pretty to look autistic. Like,
Yeah.
that did not come out of my mouth. And it was such a breath of fresh air for her, for finally somebody not to say something like that. She was expecting
Yeah.
it, but she was so grateful that that wasn't the first thing that came out of my mouth, because I didn't care about that. So with that being said, knowing that the whole ethnicity thing has bothered you before,
Yeah.
I also feel like maybe there's some people that also out there that, listen, let's face the facts. You're beautiful, you're smart, you're talented, but I feel like that also, it has worked possibly against you, because you are beautiful, because you are talented, because you are a Hispanic woman. And I feel like maybe not even, I don't, this may be a little controversial, but maybe you've had to experience like trials and tribulations with certain people that of your similar ilk, that are probably, I don't know, envious, jealous, or just don't want to see you succeed because it's not them that's succeeding.
Yeah.
And I just wonder that, I just imagine that even though with all these great things that are happening in your life, you have to go all these other hurdles just like everybody else.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I definitely have dealt with that. I honestly seeing it as a double-edged sword, because I find that people put me on this high pedestal all the time. It's like, "Oh my God, you're gorgeous, and you have all of this ahead of you." And it's like, I appreciate it, But it has also backfired on me. Number one, envy, like you stated, that has been an issue that I've dealt with a lot. And I will never understand why jealousy and envy even exist, because it's like, I just don't get it. And I feel like if I go to therapy, like that's the first thing I'll talk about. Like, why is jealousy a thing? Can someone please tell me? Because whatever I can achieve, you can achieve. Whatever you can achieve, the person next door can achieve. Like, everyone is capable of reaching incredible heights. And envy and jealousy really gets in the way of things. It's unfortunately affected me in family issues. It's affected me with friends, it with coworkers in the past. It's just so heartbreaking. And then on top of that, for me personally, it's also been an issue in regards to relationships. I'm intimidating to guys, so I've heard that all the time. That's another thing I've heard. You know, I'm 23 years old now, and I want to find someone that like I can spend the rest of my life with. And obviously, I'm not looking to get married tomorrow, run off to Vegas and get married tomorrow either. But you know, I don't have, I'm not going to run off to Vegas and get married either, guys.
I had a late registration in my brain there for a second.
I'm not going to pull an Elvis and Priscilla, I promise.
No,
but
it's not going to be the Hangover Part 4.
No, not at all. But, you know, the number one thing I've always heard, you know, and people ask me like, oh, how's your dating life? It's like, oh my God, and then I hear the same thing again. Oh, because you're so pretty and you do this and that. How's your dating life?
Is it bothersome, or do you feel like it's invasive?
It doesn't really bother me, and I don't find it invasive. I love, but I definitely call myself like a hopeless romantic. I mean, even like my favorite book, Romeo and Juliet, like it's my favorite thing. It's my favorite film. It's my dream role, like to play Juliet.
I was just gonna say, is The Notebook your favorite film? But apparently,
oh my God. I mean, I do like The Notebook. I would have to say my favorite in regards to like romance would probably have to be How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. That's like one of my favorite ones.
Okay, I've seen it, yeah.
But Romeo and Juliet is such a classic. I think I've watched every single version. I've read it in Spanish. I read it in English. I've obviously read it like in Shakespearean, of course.
Sure.
But you know, I'm such a like hopeless romantic with that. And obviously, as I got older, I always got y el novio. I always got that question growing up.
That happens in any Hispanic household.
Yes, I always got that. I started getting that question when I was like 17, 18. And, you know, when I was in college, a lot of my friends too were like, oh, like, have you done dating apps and stuff? And it's like, no, I don't like any of that stuff. I'm not into the hookup culture and everything. But the number one thing I'll hear is like, oh, Kangela, you're just really intimidating to guys. And it's at first I'm like, is that a compliment? Because now I'm hearing it more often and it's like, I don't really consider that a compliment. And it's like, why?
I'm going to tell you from a guy's perspective. From a guy's perspective, I'm going to translate it for you.
Okay.
So the fact that you are known as intimidating is because you have so much that you have going for yourself. I mean, I already said it before. You're tall, you're beautiful, you're smart, you know, you have great values. You seem like the total package. And I just feel like there's just too many insecure guys out there that it's going to take a specific person that's going to actually match whatever it is that you not only want but deserve in a man. But there's so much insecurity in this world now with just people in general that's like finding a needle in a haystack. Yeah. So that's basically where it's coming from. They're not saying it's not impossible. It's just going to be very difficult to do. And in a way, if you kind of think about it, because you have all of these things that you stay busy with, they also want to make sure that you could stop and smell the roses every now and then. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, Jason, I think you just gave me the big brother advice that I needed. So thank you for like stepping in as the big brother.
Hey, anytime.
I mean, for me though, like all of those things, as we were saying before, it definitely has backfired on me even with that. And it's like, what the heck? Like, guys, I don't bite. I promise. Like, I don't bite. And like on top of that too, as I said, of course, like relationship wise, it's very difficult to find that. I unfortunately like went through my very first breakup like not even that long ago, and it broke my heart. Still good with we're still good friends, you know, don't have anything negative against this guy at all, great guy, but you know, of course there was I constantly like sat asking myself like, oh my gosh, was he one of those guys that was intimidated by me? Like, I really hope not, you know? And then it was also now it's like the friendship thing too. It's like, I've had so many girls come up to me at Montclair State when I was, doing the content creation, doing social media for Red Hot Country. And towards the end of my senior year, I had heard a lot of people coming up, like saying, oh, like they wanted to come up and talk to you, but they thought you were going to be mean. I've had several incoming freshmen who had seen me on socials. Oh, like, aren't you the girl like from Montclair Socials? I'm like, yeah, like it's so nice to meet. And they're like, oh, like I wanted to come up and talk to you before, but I was scared you were going to be like mean. And I literally had someone word for word say, excuse my French, but they're like, oh, I thought you were going to be a bitch or like a mean girl. Right. And I just remember being like, why? Literally asked, I was like, why would you think that? And they're like, oh, well, because you're so pretty and like kind of popular. I'm like, I am not popular, first of all. I don't see myself as like the popular girl. But I don't understand where the correlation of looks and then like the whole mean girl thing comes together in girl world. I really don't understand that. And it's something I talk to a lot. I talk a lot about it on my radio show, about how, people just, us as females, we just have to be girls.
Right.
We're very vicious to each other, and it is a stereotype. But, I mean, I've witnessed it. I've experienced it. I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's really sad. So I think just going back to the main point, yes, it has backfired on me in several aspects of my life. But, I mean, of course, there's always positive, because I can take those situations and turn it into something positive, and show those people, like, no, you can come up and talk to me. Like, let's hang out. Let's be friends, It doesn't always have to be that way. And unfortunately, there are people out there who are causing that. The whole, she's pretty, she's probably a mean girl, because there are people who have done that. But I think breaking those barriers and being open and just talking about it, that's where we can start seeing that shift in our society, especially for us females with girl versus girl bullying, which I advocate a lot for. We can just start seeing that shift in those scenarios as well.
Yeah. Now, before we segue into your radio show, this kind of ties in with everything that you were just saying right now.
Yes.
It's kind of a topic that I've been wanting to kick around for a while, and I guess you would be the perfect person to talk about it, especially since this is what a lot of people are discussing nowadays. So we're living in an era now, I feel, especially in a lot of podcasts and just in the social media stratosphere, where there's this thing called, where people are saying, speak your truth. Now, I love the inception of it, because I took it as, and I think it was invented, for lack of a better term, for people to actually get their voice out after being silenced for so long, and, not being shunned, and, people actually have that chance to listen to what you have to say.
Yes.
But now I feel like it's kind of being twisted in the sense where people are using it to play the victim mentality, or only see how they see fit. There's always three sides to every story. So there's going to be your story, there's going to be their story, and then there's going to be the truth. So for me personally, I don't like, if anybody wants to say speak your truth, fine. But I'm a person that's always going to say I'm going to speak the truth, because in me speaking the truth, I'm also keeping myself accountable, because listen, I'm not absolving myself of anything that may have gone sour in past relationships or friendships, whatever. I'm going to take responsibility, because it takes two to tango. And I just feel like, and I just want to kind of get your thoughts and your idea about how people have kind of twisted this whole narrative of speaking your truth as to only seeing how they see fit, and also kind of, dare I say, play the victim card.
That's a really great topic. A great question too. I honestly, it's really just all about accountability and just being honest, being truthful. I know it kind of sounds like we're talking in circles, but you do have to be honest and say the truth, but you have to have enough courage to be like, okay, yes, here's my truth and how I viewed it, but here are the actions that I did. I have dealt with several individuals where, I mean, yes, they will speak their truth and their perspective, but they will purposefully single out all of the things that they did. And that's
my point.
And that's just like, we have to just be open-minded and honest with ourselves. Like, listen, we're human. We make mistakes. It's okay. Like, just be real, you got to be honest. And I mean, it's such a tricky topic to talk about, because I feel like you don't see that these days. You don't really see people just sit there and say, okay, so this is the situation that happened. This is the way I viewed it. And this is everything I did. And, when someone speaks to you, you might correlate into something different, that's where miscommunication comes in. That's why I always preach about communicating in person. Communicating in person is so important.
Absolutely.
Because it's not just about what you say, it's how you say it. It's your eye contact. It's your body language. It's your tone of voice, All of those things come into account, and they're actually the main key points of communication. What you're saying doesn't even have the same value as your body language, your eye contact, your tone of voice. Going back to my first breakup, so the guy that broke up with me, he spoke to me in person. It wasn't over text. It wasn't over the phone. And those are the kind of things where I'm like, okay, that person did the right thing, And it's like, when you kind of look back in other situations, it's like, why is this person deciding to do it over the phone? And not just breakup wise, I'm speaking in general, If you have a fight with a friend or a coworker, there are a lot of people who will literally take their device.
Yeah.
And they have so much power when they're behind the screen. But the moment they put the screen down, they don't say anything.
No.
Where's that ego and that
has become their outlet.
Exactly. And I've dealt with a lot of people like that. So when it comes to truth, my advice to anyone that even would be in a situation like that, where they're trying to just be like, okay, I just want the truth from this person. I want truth in this situation. Speak face to face. We're so caught up with these devices. And this is great. There's a reason why we have iMessage. There's a reason why we have Instagram DMs and emails. But there's still so much context missing, and emojis won't do anything about it.
Correct.
So I think, I think in that topic, in that situation, you just need to be face to face. That's why we have court. You don't see court over text messages or emails. Right. Everything's in person. And because of COVID, we had it over Zoom. So, that would have to kind of be my number one thing with that. Always making sure that it's in person and that you're face to face with someone, because a lot is communicated through those components like body language, tone of voice, all that stuff. It really takes into account. And when you're dealing with someone who's not truthful, it's a very difficult situation. But one thing I've always been told, true friends, true family, they will always tell you the truth to your face.
Yes.
Always. And that's key, because I don't want a friend telling me, oh yeah, you actually look really good in that dress. And in reality, I look like a clown. No, if I don't look good, you need to tell me. Or if I am not executing something properly, you need to tell me. Again, tone of voice and those things come into account, but making sure that, of course, it's done with respect, with courtesy, constructive criticism. So those would probably have to be things I would also take into account.
I have said this before, and I will say it again. I will always respect the truth, even if I don't like to hear it.
And no one likes to hear the truth. No one likes to hear it.
Well, not only does people not like to hear the truth, but at the same time, you also have people that don't want to be the bad guy for being the bearer of bad news, so to speak.
Yeah.
So they feel like they have an obligation to sugarcoat things or try to, do something with reservation before they actually come out and say with it.
Yeah.
I just learned, for me, honesty is the best policy, and
it is.
And kind of like an example to give you, and I've told the story before where. I remember I was having dinner with my mom a couple of years ago, and I was just going through some things. I was wondering why I was having a hard time in relationships and why I can't keep a girlfriend, and this dating world just sucks in general and stuff like that.
It does,
and so my mother is she's being a mom. She's telling me all yeah, I'm a good looking guy. I got this going for me. I got going that for me. Da da da. And I'm like, Ma, I don't need a mother right now. I need the truth. Obviously, there's a reason why things are not working out, and I don't know what the fuck that problem is. So I need people to tell me what it is that's wrong with me so I can solve the problem. How am I supposed to solve a problem if I don't know that there is a problem or what the problem is?
Right.
And then finally the floodgates opened and she told me
everything.
All
the truth.
And I'm like, thank you, God. I needed this. Now I can finally work on myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so funny you mentioned that, because when I talk with my mom, she will always say, I'm going to talk to you as a friend now. As your mom, this is what I think. I'm going to tell you what I think as a mom. But I'm going to talk to you as a friend, or as if you were my friend's daughter, And I think that's one of the reasons I always say this, it's the reason why I am where I am today. My mom will not sugarcoat anything. She keeps it so real that like I feel like if she were casted as like I always make this joke with her. If she were casted as like a Real Housewife for New Jersey, she would make bank because she's so raw and so real. But honesty is the best policy. And you know, the truth hurts, but it will set you free and it will make things go in a more positive direction. I know I keep using this breakup as an example because again it happened very recently.
Well, no, listen, this if you need to talk about it, you can. I mean, this is a semi-therapy session.
I'm not. So. No, literally, that's what it feels like at this point. But when this guy was breaking up with me, you know, obviously it being the first breakup like ever, I was like, oh my god, like my first breakup at 23. Talk about like a late bloomer. I feel like, but you know, they not only were they speaking to me in person, but like we've been saying, honesty is the best policy. And it's like, you know, when you have that honesty, you can just have a normal adult conversation and there's no screaming and there's no like eye rolling or anything. Because one thing I realized the older I get, I'm like, what is going on with adults these days? This is not the adulthood that I've been thinking about since I was a little kid.
Amen to
so
that.
having like, you know, that breakup conversation, very short, unfortunately, but like it was a very calm and respectful conversation. There was no tension and it wasn't this whole, oh my God, like it's over and like crying. Like, no, like we both said we'll still be friends. And it was a very respectful conversation. There was no tension. There was no negativity. And there wasn't this whole dramatic thing. So I just wish that conversations were like that in general. I've had that same conversation with friends in college where I didn't agree with them on something, but we sat down and we talked about it like two adults. And then I see other situations of like, you know, adults like a lot older, and I'm like, okay, this isn't what we signed up for.
Right.
What's going on? This is not the adulthood that we were told about growing up. Like, I think that's the one thing in my early 20s that I've been like mind boggled about.
I'm going to tell you one of my favorite words in the whole wide world right now. And that word is clarity.
Yes.
Because I feel like when somebody is truthful with you, there's going to come a sense of clarity. And I think that one of the reasons why I love the word clarity is because it's something that we all strive for, but we rarely ever get. It goes back to what we were talking about with like the sugarcoating and all the gaslighting and so on and so forth, because nobody wants to be perceived as the bad guy or the bearer of bad news. No, be an asshole, be a bitch. Tell me what it's like, and so and I'll always respect that as long as you're being truthful to me. That's why people feel like there's such a thin line between love and hate, and they say even things like, you know, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, because in some weird way, and I think you could also relate with this as well. Sometimes the best people in your business, in your industry, or your biggest supporters are the strangers, like family, friends. They'll support to an extent, but the ones that are really getting you to where you need to go and that are appreciative of everything that you do are the people that you don't interact with every single day, because at least they're coming from a place of honesty and clarity. Yeah,
and I think even in this industry, with modeling especially, you go to a casting, for instance, if you don't get picked, you don't get picked. And some casting directors will tell you, like, you're just not the look that we're looking for. And I've heard so many girls where they're like, oh my God, they didn't pick me because they said I didn't look the part. And then they start picking on themselves. And it's heartbreaking to see that. But the number one thing they will tell you about the modeling industry, or really just any aspect of the entertainment industry, whether it's acting and now social media, because that's starting to intertwine into acting and other areas as well.
I mean, even podcasting. I mean,
podcasting.
I went from podcasting to actor now, so.
Yeah, and the number one thing they will tell you is it's cutthroat.
Yes.
You have to be willing to have that tough skin and hear that you're just not what we're looking for right now. Yeah. You know, you don't have the height or you don't have the hair for, and it's not saying that you're not good at all. You're just not good for that certain project and what they're envisioning. But, you know, that also leads me to having the clarity to understand that there is a room where you belong in, just because it didn't work out in this one room doesn't mean that you can't walk into any other room ever again. No, still keep putting yourself out there. That opportunity is going to come, that blessing and that abundance is going to come. It's just not in this place, you know? So I always try to tell people that as well. You know, because I've also heard people ask advice, oh, I want to do this collaboration, but I didn't get picked because I don't have enough followers. And that also becomes like another level of insecurity, which is like crazy. It's like, oh, I don't have enough followers, I'm not good enough. And that is not the way it works. I mean, I'm on this podcast now and I'm grateful for it, but
Thank you.
I'm sure people are like, oh my God, she probably has so many followers. I only have 3,000 followers, like 3,500 on Instagram. I have about 1,900 on TikTok. And I think about 70 something subscribers on YouTube. That's not a big number compared to 30 million or 40 million, but you always have to shift the perspective, and which is where the clarity comes back in. You give yourself that clarity. Imagine yourself in a room talking to 3,500 people.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people in a room. So that's basically what I'm doing, but through social media, you know? 100 people is already a lot in a room. So, you know, you kind of have to look at the positive side of things. Yes, it's a cutthroat industry, but you can still find the positive in that.
Absolutely. Like I said, things may be difficult, but they're not impossible.
No, they're not impossible at all. And, you know, again, like I was saying previously, you know, we're so used to seeing people get famous on social media overnight. And I mean, that would be awesome to be viral and famous overnight, you know, be the next Alex Earl, be the next Charlie D'Amelio. But that's just not the way it is every single time. And again, just enjoy the process of it and don't be too hung up on like, oh, I don't have this. I'm not enough. You are enough, and you have to just be confident in yourself. When you have that confidence and you're honest with yourself, because we're talking about honesty and truth with others, but if you're not truthful and honest to yourself, then where is that going to get you?
Round of applause, round of applause, round of applause for Kangela.
Thank you.
Now, your radio show.
Yes.
I want to get into that a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, I just want to know basically the inception of it, where it came from, what's the experience been like, and how do you feel like you've grown as an artist in your own art since the beginning to where you are now?
Yeah, so for me, The Feminine Diaries is my radio show. It's on 90.3 WMSC Upper Montclair under iHeartRadio. So I have it right now. I'm on season 5, which is so unbelievable. I can't even believe it's been 5 seasons already of The Feminine Diaries. But yeah, I mean, it's just your typical radio show where we do play tracks of all different genres, all different decades. I'm a big throwback girly, so I'm always playing, you know, if I'm playing Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and Elvis Presley. And then next thing you know, I'm playing New Edition or I'm playing Michael Jackson.
Real love, I'm searching for. Let me stop.
Exactly. But yeah, I'm playing so many different throwbacks. Maybe you got some Bruce Springsteen in there.
Sure.
But then I'm also playing modern tracks. You know, you've got Sabrina Carpenter, Olivia Rodrigo, you've got Jack Harlow. But with all of the music, of course, in a radio show, you want to chat and you kind of want it to be a free and open space. And I think throughout the years, we've seen radio be very open and very honest. I mean, you've got people like Wendy Williams. She was bold on radio. And then you have shows like War of the Roses. Like, you know, it's definitely always very intense and you can definitely be yourself on the air. But what about having that safe space where you can just hear those words of encouragement? And that's where the Feminine Diaries come in. I've always seen myself just empowering others and doing that, whether it was through a panel like I did recently or doing it with friends and family who just need that extra boost and words of encouragement, which is where I get the whole tagline of, hey, it's your radio big sister here. So being that big sister for someone out there who needs to hear words of encouragement about anything they might be dealing with, focusing on issues like depression and anxiety, but also throwing in some tea in there, of course, because there's always some tea to spill, especially today in social media, but always making sure to keep everything in a positive limelight and giving lots of people a spotlight to tell their story. I've had people from all different walks of life and all different industries. I've had Gina Mellish, who is a pageant coach here in New Jersey. She's been on the team for Miss Universe and Miss USA. And I've even had friends of mine who are in the LGBTQ plus community and speak about what it's like, you know, being trans and busting myths about it. To even having my friend Tiaja Elliott, who was Miss Grand New Jersey, and talking about her reign and how she's been able to do so much charity work and give back as a title holder. And the list goes on. So really just giving several different people a platform to talk about their story and how they got to where they are today, because I may be empowering someone in one episode, but how cool would it be to hear from another person's standpoint and keep that chain of empowerment and positivity going? So that's really just what the Feminine Diaries is all about. And I'm just so honored and blessed to have that platform. It's taken off so incredibly, and it's put me in rooms that I never thought I would be, and has given me opportunities that I never thought I would have. So
it's a great feeling.
Yeah, it's honestly such a great feeling. And to hear that I've motivated and inspired people already with it is incredible, because it's like, I've inspired you, I've motivated you, so I did my job.
I know that feeling, yeah.
And that's honestly my main goal with everything I do, from social media to radio and broadcasting. People always ask me what's my number one goal with all of that, because again, it all kind of just bunches up into one thing. And people always expect me to say, oh, like, my goal is to get verified on TikTok or Instagram, or to reach 1 million followers. Yes, that would be great, but my main goal is to just inspire and motivate people, and I've already done that. So the fact that I've been able to fulfill that with this show is just a full circle moment.
Now, I'm just going to call an audible right now, and I'm going to ask you for some big sister advice right now. Since I gave you big brother advice earlier.
Okay, cool.
So, really quick, because we're up against the clock, and I want to get into my final segment before we do.
Yeah, totally.
So, and this is me being transparent here. I am 39 years old.
Okay.
I've never been married. I don't have any kids. At least not that I know of. No, I'm just kidding. And you know, unfortunately, I'm in a generation now where the dating life sucks. You know, the dating world is horrible. I don't know how. I would do anything to get rid of all this technology to go back to the way things were, just to simpler times. But the point that I was getting at is because I was thinking Father's Day just passed.
Yes.
And I was thinking to myself, in theory and on paper, you would think me being a Latino, Americanized, 39-year-old man in this country that doesn't have any children and has never been married, am I doing something right or am I doing something wrong? Is that considered me a red flag or a green flag?
I don't think it's red or green flag. It kind of goes into my personal opinion of just understanding that everyone's path in life is different. You don't have to be at a certain time right now where you have to be doing something. Everyone's life is different. There's a reason why certain things might not have happened in your life yet, and we don't know what the future holds. So just kind of sitting and understanding, like, you know what, as I said previously, everything in life happens for a reason. And, you know, I'm a person of faith, so I always say God's timing is perfect timing, or the universe's timing is perfect timing. But the whole, like, red flag, green flag thing, I mean, it kind of taps into me saying, like, I don't want to talk too much about how my generation sees it. It's like, oh, this is a red flag or this is a green flag. Like, I think everyone has, like, different red flags and green flags. But I find that, honestly, as long as you're living your life to the fullest and living your testimony and sticking with your values and your worths, that's all that matters. Because, you know, tomorrow's not promised. And that's the unfortunate truth. We don't talk about it every day because it's something very scary. But, you know, let's say, God forbid, today was our last day. You know, did you live it to the fullest? Did you fulfill it? Did you take today as a blessing and celebrate it? You know? So I think at the end of the day, like, if you seeing where you are in your life right now, I think it's just making sure at the end of the day that you're healthy, that you're happy, that your family's happy, that you have a good relationship with those that matter to you most. And, you know, those milestones in your life, like whether it's getting married, having kids, getting that big break, getting that job, whatever it may be, like, that will come in its own time. As long as you're just putting in the hard work and you're hustling every day, that's all that matters, honestly. But no, depending on where you are in life and stuff, that honestly, I feel like all comes naturally and it's all planned out, you know? So that's kind of my sister advice, I would say.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is truth, and therefore there you have. All right, so anyways, we're about to close out this episode in a little bit, but before we do, I just want to get into this one final segment, kind of end things on a positive note here on the show.
Ooh, okay.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for everybody's favorite segment. It's called This or That. If you've never seen the show before, what happens is I will ask my guests multiple choice questions here. It's no right or wrong answer. It's just what you like best, and it's just an opportunity for the audience to get to know you more and just end things on a positive note.
Okay,
All right.
awesome.
So,
I'm
are you
excited.
ready, Kangela?
Yes, I am ready.
Are you ready, Najee? All right, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, for this or that, and remember, there's no right or wrong answer. Just go with what you want. Ladies and gentlemen, for this or that, you, Miss Guerrero. Playlist or podcast?
Ooh, I'm going to have to say playlist. I'm a big music girl.
Okay. Slides or Crocs?
Ooh, slides. I hate Crocs.
Beach or pool?
Ooh. For the sunset, I'll say beach.
Okay. Dogs or cats?
Dogs. I love dogs.
Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Definitely an early bird.
Okay. It's way past your bedtime now.
Yeah.
Instagram or TikTok?
Oh, no. Instagram or TikTok? I'm going to have to say TikTok.
Okay. To give or to receive?
To give.
Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Ooh. People would say extrovert, so yeah, definitely extrovert.
Batman or Superman?
Ooh. I've been watching Smallville, so I'm going to have to say Superman.
Okay. Iron Man or Captain America?
Captain America. Oh my gosh. Yes.
She just started blushing right there, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, Captain America.
Chris Evans, you heard. Are you glass half empty or glass half full?
Ooh. A little bit of both.
Okay. Would you rather be embarrassed or be afraid?
Be afraid.
Would you rather be too hot or be too cold?
I'd rather be too hot. I hate the cold.
Would you rather do dishes or laundry?
Dishes.
Do you prefer the window seat or the aisle seat?
Window.
Are you book smart or street smart?
Definitely book smart. I'm not street smart. Sorry, guys.
Reading or writing?
Ooh. Probably writing.
Okay. Would you rather speak every language or play every instrument?
Speak every language.
Cardio or weights?
Weights.
Dancing or karaoke?
Definitely dancing. I'm not a karaoke girl.
Drama or comedy?
Comedy.
Movie theater or streaming service?
Movie theater.
Ice water or room temperature?
Room temperature.
And then finally, teamwork or solo project?
If we're talking schoolwork, I'm going to have to say solo work.
Okay.
Definitely solo work.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this or that, and that is going to do it for this episode of First Class, Second Place. Thank you to my lovely guest, Kangela Guerrero, for coming through here.
Thank you for having me.
This was so much fun. Is there anybody you want to give a shout out to before we close out?
I just want to say everyone that's really been supporting me, my friends, family, and loved ones, and of course my supporters on social media. Thank you so much for all of your love and support as always, and stay tuned for more projects coming up in 2025.
And where can they find your social media and also your radio show at that?
Definitely. So all of my socials are at Kangela Guerrero on Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and YouTube. And if you want to tune into the Feminine Diaries, you can tune into season 5 this summer from Fridays to 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on 90.3 FM or on the iHeartRadio app.
Wow, that is the most professional outro I've ever heard on the show. So congratulations.
Thank you.
That is why you are who you are. But anyway, Kangela, thank you so much for doing this. This has been a long time making, and I'm so glad that we made it happen. And thank you, most importantly, for being first class.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, you can find me at I am Jason Enrique on all social media platforms. Don't forget to like, subscribe on YouTube at Jason Enrique. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you next week. This has been the First Class, Second Place podcast. We out.